The Independent Electoral Commission is holding an e-voting conference in Cape Town at the moment. They describe it as marking the beginning of a national conversation on the subject. I'm not sure that it's the beginning of. It's something that has been spoken about before. I was looking on the internet at some of the um, what's the sort of global experience. Estonia, the first country in the world to use online voting, that was in 2005. And in 2023, that country had held what is called the world's first mostly digital elections. 51% electronic votes cast, 49% paper votes, and it's the first time an election has been held anywhere where there have been more electronic votes cast than paper votes. In India last year, almost 1 million people voted using e-voting machines at polling stations. Russia and Turkey, amongst the countries rolling out e-voting systems. Norway and Mexico are allowing e-voting they allowed e-voting in last year's elections for citizens living abroad. France has an online voting system, but that isn't used for national or local elections. So it is in its infancy globally. Dr. Yul Derek Davids of the Human Sciences Research Council joins us now. Yul, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I mean, how desirable an end is this, to have digital voting available exclusively or largely?
First of all, I think we need to distinguish between online voting and electronic voting at the polling station. I think you just mentioned a few countries that differ in that respect.
Yeah.
But I think there are specific benefits, to have e-voting. Just to name a few, I mean, of course, one would expect higher voter turnout, more efficiency. That there's normally long queues, but this may prevent long queues. There's also a cost benefit to the green economy. Large-scale paper that must be printed is not needed. We also know that the long paper ballots that we have is quite problematic. So there's a range of pull factors, but of course there's also challenges. You've mentioned the Estonia case. I mean, we had somebody presenting this morning, and from our studies, it's clear that, it may increase voter turnout among youth, but that's not always the case because, it's more about the political issues, whether the politicians address the situation as well. And that will also bring, people to the polls. But there are a number of pull factors that is quite important to consider. It's quite a costly initial phase in terms of your capital investment. But there are long-term benefits, financial and, non-financial.
This is what the Estonian delegate has been telling the conference, that they, in the last election, saved a considerable amount of money on printing costs and other costs associated with having paper ballots available. And in the South African context, and in the context of any country that holds democratic elections that isn't as far along the digital development path as countries like Estonia, the absence of connectivity and so on. It's all very well in suburban Cape Town, where there's very good connectivity across the peninsula and into the northern suburbs, to have electronic voting stations instead of paper-based voting stations at polling stations. But in areas of Khayelitsha, in parts of the rural Western Cape, it becomes less feasible, and one can't ignore that kind of imbalance when thinking about this.
Of course, we know that there's a number of technological requirements to implement e-voting. And we know our country currently, if you talk about poverty, inequality, and then you talk about the digital divide and digital literacy is particularly, visible in rural areas where people struggle to access the internet, which you've mentioned. So there needs to be digital inclusiveness, So there's a need to address a number of technological resources, but this will take a while. I mean, we consider this in the report, and as well as today, people discuss the fact that it is a holistic approach that must be taken. It's not just the ISC where it needs to lead this. people use online platforms on a daily basis. So, the whole e-governance approach should be actually combined with this, where people are, more and more or less brought onto the online systems. They get used to using it. There's a culture. And this should be combined with, obviously, large-scale training and large-scale literacy training for the public and civic education. But at the same time, as the eyes, you should also train their officials and also, obviously, recruit the necessary skills to implement it. So there's a lot needed to implement e-voting.
And we haven't spoken about security, and
Yes.
Something like cryptocurrency is supposed to be unhackable, and we've just had the biggest cryptocurrency hack ever, and North Korean hackers are spending vast sums of money that they stole from those crypto wallets that you aren't supposed to be able to do. So when the developers of secure voting systems tell you, don't worry, they're secure, I go, not as secure as you think. And that's, again, something that we can't ignore in this conversation.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, no system is foolproof. I mean, going back to the Estonia case, because there are the example of online voting, but even the e-voting at polling stations, you do need to build a number of measures and layers in order to secure the secrecy, the confidentiality, but also, to make it foolproof. So it's a quite difficult and complex process, but it's something that can be done. What the Estonia case is doing is they have built a number of layers in, and it has worked, but it's not 100% foolproof. But then what you do need to do is to obviously do an audit and verification, and you can adjust for that. I mean, even paper-based elections always have some margin of error and spoiled ballots.
Yeah.
So I think it's the margin that you look at, but that in itself, to lay that out is quite expensive. We may have to borrow from other countries' knowledge, or we may need to partner with organizations and countries that have done this already. So it's a monumentous task.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed to Dr. Yul Derek Davids of the Human Sciences Research Council.